Um, this is about chapter 9, key trends and issues for the commercial. In this topic, we are going to discuss about the considerations in conducting due diligence, including the, the scope of analysis, financial, operational, legal, structural, and environmental factors, detailed brownfield legislative requirements, including those imposed by the Environment Protection Act and the Municipal Act, define capital gains and capital loss for taxation purposes, and outline typical calculations and differentiate between capital gain and taxable income with respect to the exemptions, discuss capital cost allowance with respect to the specific cost basis, soft costs, and the CCA classes, outline CCA calculation, including planning, balance, and state line. Thus, the half-year rule, land and building allocation, recaptured capital cost allowance, the process and the scope of analysis involved in the site selection, and outline the role of economic development offices in attracting new investments and expansion of the existing businesses. Outline three options available when the business insolvency occurs, including proposal, receivership, and bankruptcy. Highlight key steps involved in municipal tax sales for tax areas, including tax area certificate, the cancellation price, public sales by tender and auction. Describing um, six common forms of ownership associated with a business, including sole proprietor, partnership, limited partnership, corporation, trust ownership, and the joint ventures. So to start, to start, let's go with the aspect of due diligence. Due diligence is a common accepted business practice that verifies key facts concerning a real estate transaction. Um, a simple example of a due diligence in residential sales would be the buyers requiring a home inspection. With commercials, real estate due diligence is far more expansive, particularly with large complex transactions. Prospective commercial buyer must carefully assess all risks associated with the business and a property acquisition, with particular emphasis on factors impacting ongoing income stability. Due diligence typically focuses on financial, legal, structural, and environmental considerations. Most are customized to suit individual circumstances, but ultimately the goal is a full knowledge of the relevant fact. Due diligence can range from a straightforward direct inquiry by a prospective owner uh, to a team of accounting, legal, and other professionals scrutinizing every aspect of the business, investment, property, and developing a substantial customized audit. Commercial transactions usually provide for relatively open-ended provisions, particularly 30 days or more, giving the buyer wide range wide-ranging access to transactions related information through available through public sources as well as detailed documentation furnished by the seller. The buyer usually has the right to simply walk away from the transactions if anything discovered does not meet expectations. No standard clause is used, and the scope of the material needed and the time period required may vary. Scope of analysis. A standard due diligence package does not exist, but as the need vary from with the type of property being transacted, most are customized to suit individual circumstances, but ultimately the goal is the full knowledge of the relevant facts relating to the purchase. All documents must be closely examined along with a thorough inspection of the property. Financial operations. Financial due diligence focuses on the financial health of the business being analyzed. For example, an income producing property would undergo a thorough analysis of documents including income statements, balance sheet, rent rolls and leases, bank statement, tax bills and returns, employee records, and digital information regarding operating costs. The This analysis would be contemplated with various seller supplied this analysis will be complemented with various seller-supplied documents, including all financial records, lease documents, inventory of equipment and other assets, utility bills, building the service contracts, and insurance policies. The second is a legal analysis of the property, but involves title of the property and major asserts existing mortgage and the comprehensive survey, license, contracts, permits, and zoning compliance. As a financial or operation, the seller would be required to furnish the applicable documents in his possession. The third due diligence involves structural part, where basically getting a building construction report. So commercial building construction, um, uh, a commercial building condition report, also known as the building inspection report, usually includes a visual inspection of the building, review of the relevant documentation, and interviews if necessary, identification of physical deficiencies, photo documentation, and detailed summary report. Many inspection reports are now completed in accordance with the ASTM International American Society of Testing and Materials, as set out in the ASTM E2018. The guidelines provide detailed standards and procedures for all aspects of the research process, the identification of physical deficiencies, and the final property condition report. Identified physical deficiencies are of key importance as they reflect material defects and significant deferred maintenance items that must be addressed but would exclude normal maintenance and repair items. Inspection fees may vary based on the scope of the report, property types, and components. The report would detail key facts about the building envelope, the structural design, mechanical systems, electrical systems, interior civilization, and life safety systems. Environmental due diligence may also necessitate an environmental audit to assess overall environmental condition prior to the purchase, as hazards and contamination can represent a significant risk. While audits are typically associated with industrial and commercial land, their use can be relevant to a wide range of property types. Environmental audit can broadly run the three phases: phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 and phase 2 audit could apply in case of due diligence. Phase 3 involves remedial work. In the case of phase 1 of the environmental assessment, involves the visual inspection combined with the review of owner documents, registry information, ministry department records, and certificates and any other relevant environmental record. Phase 1 audit determines if the reason exists to believe that the property may have some form of environmental contamination. Phase 2 audit is a more costly investigation involving various tests, hazardous waste assessment, analysis, and extra sampling. A phase 2 audit determines the scope of the environmental problems along with recommendation for remedial action. And a phase 3 audit is the final phase involving a detailed remedial steps and the costs associated with circumstances identified in the phase 2. So to recap, um, the scope of analysis for the due diligence involves financial operation, legal, structural, and environmental. The financial due diligence focuses on the financial health of the business being analyzed. For example, for comparative property, that would enter a thorough analysis of the document, including income statement, balance sheet, rent rolls, and releases, bank statement, tax bills, and returns, and private records and detailed information regarding the operating costs. This analysis will be complemented with various seller-provided documents, including all financial records, lease documents, inventory of equipment and other assets, utility bills, building service agreements, and initial policies. And with regards to the legal aspect of due diligence, legal analysis of the property would involve title to the property, and major assets, existing mortgages, and other encumbrances, survey licenses, contracts, permits, zoning, compliance. The structural part would involve getting the building condition report as per the ASTM standards. And the identified physical deficiencies are of key importance as they reflect material defect and significant deferred maintenance item that must be addressed, but would exclude normal maintenance and repair items. Inspection fees vary based on the scope of the report. The power types and components report the report would detail key facts about the building type, about the buildings, and love structural design and then mechanical systems, electrical system, interior finishes, and life safety systems. Environmental due diligence may also necessitate a required environmental audit to assess the overall environmental condition prior to the purchase, as hazards contamination can represent a significant risk. While audits are typically associated with industrial and commercial lines, their use can be applied to a wide range of property types. There are three phases of the three kinds of million phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is basically a visual inspection. Phase 2 is a more costly investigation involving various tests and hazardous-based assessment and also soil water sampling. And phase 3 is remedial steps taken for the power identified during phase 2. So that's all what due diligence would mean for most cases: financial, legal, structural, environmental. Now moving on to the next part, which is the brownfield. Ontario brownfield legislation encourages the cleanup and revitalization of abandoned or contaminated lands. Derelict or underutilized industrial and commercial sites are frequently located in a desirable urban location, like a waterfront location or immediately adjacent to a downtown commercial or retail center. Such properties typically have the advantage of an in-place infrastructure such as road utilities, water, sewer servicing, school, and transit facilities. So, the looking at the legislative background, the Brownfield Statute Law Amendment Act 2001 amended various acts such as the Municipal Act and the Planning Act to facilitate brownfield redevelopment. This this legislation addresses a key factor limiting development of eminent properties. Developers and lenders had been reluctant to invest in such sites given the potential future liability and consequent legal and financial risk. The brownfield legislation set out specific rules limiting future environmental liability for redeveloped properties while at the same time ensuring compliance with environmental standards during the cleanup process. Essentially, the legislation provides environmental liability protection for owners who follow prescribed site assessment and cleanup process. Such protection also extends to others, including municipalities taking action to sell a property through a tax sale or related municipal activities, secured creditors involved in financing a project, and fiduciary action and fiduciaries acting in their professional capability relating to such project. What are the prescribed actions or prescribed standards here? A system of checks and balances ensure that the prescribed standards are adhered to during the cleanup process based on the proposed land use together with the site-specific conditions. This legislation also provides various quality assurance measures such as certification standards for cleanup profession sign off by such professionals and audit process to ensure compliance and mandatory reporting to a site registry. The legislation achieves several objectives: assess, assesses valuable land resources for remediation and redevelopment, address liability issues that have hindered the brownfield initiative by municipalities, developers, and lenders, provide an avenue for municipalities to pursue community improvement provisions by granting financial incentives and tax relief for the remediation and development of brownfield, speed up the planning process, and remove various obstacles to efficient redevelopment of such site, positively impact the assessment base through better utilization of underdeveloped properties. One few of the key requirements are Regulation 15403 under Environmental Protection Act clarifies certain environmental liability issues and sets out conditions that must be met in order to receive protection from the future Ministry of Environment orders following site cleanup, site assessment. The property must meet the site assessment standards phase 1 or phase 2 depending on the past present use in order to avoid future MOE orders. Standards: the property must meet various soil, groundwater, and sediment standards appropriate for the intended use, and record of site conditions. The preparation of a record of site conditions is required as detailed in this regulations, along with subsequent filing with the Environmental Site Registry. Regulation 274 filed under the Municipal Act permits brownfield sites to be viewed as eligible properties under Section 365. Accordingly, the host municipality, the municipality in which the eligible property is situated, can provide municipal tax assistance for such property if the statutory requirements set out in 365(1) are met. Community improvement projects: the property must be located in the designated community improvement pro- project pursuant to the Planning Act. Municipal bylaw: the municipality must draft a bylaw authorizing provisions of tax assistance for the eligible property. The municipality must complete a detailed application form verifying the program eligibility and forward it to the Ministry of Finance. The earlier drafted bylaw can be enacted once the application to the Ministry of Finance is full. The, the province offers matching education property tax assistance based on the percentage value of the tax assistance offered by the municipality. So to recap, the brownfield legislation amends various acts like Municipal and Planning Act to facilitate brownfield development, and essentially Ontario Brownfield encourages cleanup and revitalization of abandoned and contaminated land and provides environmental liability protection on following site assessment and cleanup procedures, and extends to the municipal tax sales, secured creditors involved in financing a project or unauthorized to fiduciaries. Key requirements: the EPA clarifies environmental liability issues. There is a site assessment, and so essentially there are key requirements under the Environment Protection Act. Clarifies certain environmental liability issues and sets out the conditions that must be met in order to receive protection on the future Ministry of Environment orders. Following site cleanup, site assessment, this property must meet site assessment standards. The property must meet various soil, groundwater, and sediment deposits after for intended use. And preparation of a record of sites conditions is required as detailed in the regulation. Most municipalities can provide host municipalities can provide property tax assistance like by these a few conditions. Community improvement project property must be located in designated community improvement project pursuant to the Planning Act. Um, Municipal must draft a bylaw authorizing provisions of taxes into eligible properties. The municipality must complete a detailed application form verifying the program eligibility and forward to the Ministry of Finance. The earlier drafted bylaw can then be enacted once the application to the Ministry of Finance is successful. The province matching education and property tax assistance based on the percentage value. So and there is a matching contribution from the province side. Basically, province offers matching education and property tax assistance based on the percentage value of the taxes offered by the municipality. Taxation of the capital gain is the next topic. Taxation and its implementation for commercial property have previously been discussed, but along with the harmonized sales tax and non-resident requirements, certain the key element in the sale of a commercial property involves the capital gain and the calculation of capital cost allowance. The following information is built on the previous taxation topics. Capital gain is described as a gain from disposition of capital property, a percentage of which must be added to the taxable income on the disposition of assets. This section of Income Tax Act was introduced in 1971, commonly referred to as evaluation day. The capital property includes any item from which capital gain or loss could be realized and includes a depreciable property. To recap, a capital gain is described as a gain from the disposition of a capital property, a percentage of which must be added to the taxable income on disposition of the asset. This section of the Income Tax Act was introduced in 1971, commonly referred to as a valuation day. Capital property includes any item from which the capital gain or loss would be realized and includes depreciable property. The capital gain is a gain on the sale or exchange of a capital asset that meets criteria for the capital gain asset under the Income Tax Act. Two real estate examples are provided. The first details the gain by the corporation, and the second provides the calculation of the gain realized by an individual. Calculations can vary based on the type of property and assets on the investor or owner. For example, in case there's anything investment acquired a commercial building several years ago and recently sold the property for 1.329 million, the registered cost basis is estimated to be 1 million, and so the capital gain and taxable capital gain will be sale price minus adjusted cost basis minus cost of sale and capital gain, and there is a capital gain exemption. And then the capital gain is computed as 269,000, and the capital gain and taxable capital gain will be 50% of that, will be 134,926. And in the case of individual, Mrs. Jones purchases a property containing 4 units at the cost of $38,000. On 1971, the value was estimated as $40,000. So essentially, 1971 is a base year. It's from the year when the law was passed. So throughout the ensuing year, the property was well maintained and produced adequate rental income. Before selling it, a new furnace was sold for at the cost of $7,000. Later in the year, the property was sold to the market for $5,000. So the capital cost, so the amount- the capital gain will be sale price $5,000 minus adjusted base price, which is $47 and 971, and $7,000 of furnace, and the cost of sale, giving it to the $400,000 of capital gain. Capital gain versus taxable income. The Income Tax Act does not specifically set out whether whether the gain or loss is capital in nature. The taxpayer is responsible for reporting the gain as income or capital gain. This report may then be challenged by the CRA with onus of proof on the taxpayer. Over the years, the determination has been made based on the number of primary factors such as intention of the taxpayer, relationship to the taxpayer business, frequency of transactions, length of time held, nature of transaction, and the object of the corporation. Should a debate proceed to the tax court of Canada, the court will consider relevant factors concerning taxpayer conduct and during during, and after the period under appeal. Certain factors carry more weight in the process: intention, relationship to the taxpayer business, frequency of transaction, nature of transaction assets, and object of the corporation. The key issue involves what the taxpayer intention was at the time of the property purchase. When the property is bought for investment, any resale profit could still be considered taxable for ordinary income. If apparent intent was to resell for a profit at a future date, the tax code would consider such things as reasons for the sale, compelling necessity, change in circumstances, and external factor. Relationship to the taxable business. The tax code will not really classify profit as the taxable as an ordinary income, and the taxpayer uses expertise acquired in regular business activity to generate profit on the purchase and sale of a similar or related commodity. The court also looks at the time and attention the taxpayer intends on the transaction. The real estate transaction of contractors and real estate brokers, salesperson, and appraisals have typically fallen in the close scrutiny. Frequency of transaction. Revenue Canada will assess how often the taxpayer engages in the sale of a capital property. Usually, the frequency of such occurrence suggests that the carrying of a business for profit assessment as ordinary business income will be the results. Nature of transaction assess. The taxability of added income may be indicated if the assets cannot normally be used either personally or for the investment purpose. Mortgages are often judged under the test. If the mortgage is purchased at a substantial discount or has a short maturity date, the mortgage may be viewed as meaning the mortgagee may be used as in a business that realizes a profit from the transaction, thus invoking business income as opposed to the capital gain. The tax code will look at the article of incorporation to determine if the transaction falls under the object of the corporation and if it is a part of the due business. However, absence of provisions may be deemed conclusive by the court, proving that a special sale fell beyond the normal course of affair of the company. It's difficult, and once again, the burden of proof rests with the taxpayer. Special note: real estate transactions. The profit would likely be charged as regular income when the taxpayer buys and sells real estate on a regular basis. However, if the taxpayer can prove that these dispositions were planned and necessary part of the total investment program, then there may be a case for capital gain treatment of the profit. In case of farmland, if the taxpayer purchases or inherits the land and lived on it for over a period of time, the disposition of the property will likely will most likely be regarded as a capital gain. Further, if the sale of the real estate is not planned, that is, broker was not employed, the property is not advertised, no signs or other visible evidence of active marketing is present, then the profit may not always be treated as a capital gain. In some cases, the profit from the eventual sale of a property may be deemed as capital gain, whether the taxpayer purchased the real estate from a third party to whom he or she expected to transfer it without profit and was then left with the property, when a third party backed out of the transaction. Exemptions to the payment of capital gain have varied throughout the past decade and for advice needed. However, registrants should be aware that the exemptions concerning the principal residence. The principal residence is defined as a house, apartment in a duplex or a apartment building or a condominium, cottage, houseboat, trailer, or mobile park, or shared property or society. To qualify as a principal residence, certain criteria must be met. Taxpayer must own the housing unit either jointly or solely. The family unit must may have a unit may have only one primary residence. The land upon which the housing unit sits cannot exceed 1 acre, and any excess is considered to be is not considered to be the part also of the primary residence unless the taxpayers can prove it necessary for personal use and enjoyment. The unit must be ordinarily inhabited in the year. The unit must be designated as a taxpayer principal residence for the year. The pretext expired by should be sought in regards to capital gain issues. Capital loss. Capital loss is a loss which has incurred in the disposition of capital property. Provisions in the Income Tax Act provide for the deduction of capital loss for both individuals and corporations. Capital cost allowance. Capital assets, though durable, have the limited lifetime and at some point will be replaced. Generally, the capital cost of a property is what the buyer pays for the property. Capital costs include such costs as the delivery charges and applicable taxes. Income Tax Act permits the deduction of part of the capital costs of the asset against income from the business. Capital cost allowance is a maximum rate set under the Income Tax Act that a taxpayer can claim for depreciation. Capital cost allowance is not a cash flow item, but rather a matter of taxation and tax deductible expense. Capital cost allowance acknowledges the existence of depreciation that is a result of wear or tear over the life of the asset and the ability to offset income in relation to the cost of the asset. Adjusted cost basis. The adjusted cost basis represents the acquisition price of the property with adjustments as prescribed in the Income Tax Act. The Act provides for various adjustments. Selected examples are included for the illustration purposes only, and the calculation can be complex. Mandatory capitalization of certain expenses, interest expenses for vacant land, or soft costs relating specifically to the construction, alteration, and renovation of the building. Adjustment allowed for the Act due to replacement property acquisitions, selling costs for the disposition of capital property, reduction that arise through the receipt and the use of public assistance funding, reduction due to the partial disposition of capital and property, adjustment relating to various elections by the corporation at the time of acquisition and wind up. Determination of the adjusted cost basis can be complex. Determination of adjusted cost, capital costs can be complex. Soft costs. The calculation of soft costs can be a significant issue with regards to the adjusted cost basis. The Act does not define the term soft costs but understood to include but not limited to construction-related inspection fees, utility hookup charges, engineering fees, municipality fees, legal accounting fees, and mortgage fees. Capitalization of soft costs is generally limited to the construction fees. Pre and post construction costs, subject to qualification, may be deductible if incurred for the production of income. The Act also permits the amortization of selected expenses depending on their contribution to the long-term earning capacity of the property and the ability to expense certain items regardless of whether they occur during, before, and after the concession period. For example, costs associated with landscaping. CCA classes. The Income Tax Act and regulation details various classes for purpose of CCA calculation. Specific The rate of CC applied to each class is specified as the maximum rate. Taxpayer may therefore claim any CC amount up to the maximum by multiplying the CC rate for the balance in the class at the end of the taxation year. Once the amount of CC actually claimed is deducted from the balance of the class, the remaining balance is carried forward and available for future CCA claims. So the so to recap, the capital cost allowance, the adjusted cost basis, there's a soft cost factor, and there are CCA classes. Like the Income Tax Act allows collection of a part of capital cost of assets against income for the business. CC is the maximum rate set under the Income Tax Act. Soft costs of is a construction related inspection costs, utility hookup charges, or engineering fees, municipal fees, legal or accounting fees, or mortgage fees. Calculation of soft costs is then limited to the construction phase. Pre and post construction costs. Subject to qualification may be deductible if incurred for production of income. Costs associated with the landscaping can be expensed. Maximum of CCA is limited to total of amount of total taxable income before CCA. And this is one of the important restrictions. Like before 1972, no restriction existed regarding rental income. Paper loss can be incurred if the CCA deduction exceeded the net operating income. Multiple unit residential properties were at one point another important exemptions. Tax reform during 1998 removed all the advantages to this investment cycle. As a result, the maximum allowable capital cost allowance is now limited to the total amount of taxable income before CCA. This requirement effectively eliminates the possibility of paper loss from the CCA deduction. The, the calculation of capital cost allowance. There are basically few aspects here. There is a declining balance method, there's a half year rule and available for use, and there is land and building allocation, followed by the recapture of capital cost allowance, and then we'll discuss about the straight line method for and taxation year when it's less than 12 months and undepreciated capital cost. So let's talk about the CC calculation. Declining balance method. This is most frequently used method to calculate the effect depreciation involving the reduction of the capital cost by percentage as set out in the particular class of the property with subsequent reduction always applied to the declining balance. For example, if the UCC for the class at the beginning of the year was $50,000, and then you did a purchase of $5,000, and then there's a lesser of disposition during the year capital cost, and the purchase of disposition is $3,000. So the UCC before adjustment is $52,000, and less than half of the net amount is $1,000, which can give the UCC before CCA is $51,000. Then you apply, if I get the CCA, which is in this case about 10%, so that becomes, and then you add back. So essentially, you will subtract 5,100 from the UCC before adjustment, which is $52,000, which makes it to the $46,900. Let's look at the half rule and available for use. The half year rule, often referred to as a 50% rule, was implemented to correct the fact that the asset purchased at the end of the taxation year will otherwise provide an amount in a class eligible for the maximum capital allowance in that year. So to recap, the half year rule was implemented to correct the fact that the asset purchased during the end of the taxation year will otherwise provide an amount in class eligible for the maximum capital cost in that year. This rule provides that only 50% of the purchase during the year minus the lesser of the capital cost and the proceeds of the disposition of the assets in the class during the year is deducted before the CC for the year is calculated. By effectively reducing the CCA on purchase in excess of the disposition made during the year, the tax advantage of late purchase is reduced. The regulation limits the amount of capital costs available for newly acquired assets to one half of the nominal amount of CCA for the year of acquisition. For newly acquired property, the regulation would further amended for all taxation year following 1989. The half-year rule now applies only to properties that are available for use. Otherwise, capital cost allowance is referred to the following taxation year. Previously, CCA can be taken for properties under construction, while not technically being used for income purposes. Now, capital property must be used for generating income, and regulations set out requirements in this regard. CCA may be deducted in the year the property was first used for generating income. So now the CC may be deducted in the year the property was first used for generating income, 358 days following taxation year in which the property was acquired. The issue of available for use includes special rules, election by taxpayers, and relieving rules related to that term go beyond the scope of the publication. Land and building allocation. As the cost of the building and improvements thereto would normally be categorized under the capital cost allowance for provisions, and the land will not. Allocating the purchase price between the land and improvement is allocating the purchase price between land and improvement is necessary as a rule. Such allocation must be fair, reasonable and defensible. Expert advice is required. Sellers and buyer perspective on how this allocation occurs are usually different owing to tax implications arising from the determination. The allocation of purchase price between the land and the building is a key negotiating point in many commercial transactions. The buyer seeks to maximize building allocation plus the chattel associated with the sale to establish a high capital cost for the future CC calculation. The seller wants to minimize the allocation to avoid recapture. Generally, a reasonable mutually accepted allocation, if defensible, would not be sufficient in the contract or agreement. Occasionally, the registrants use the municipal tax assessment ratio as a benchmark for allocation. Alternatively, an appraiser may be retained to value the property and provide supportable allocation between land and improvement. If the supportable allocation between land and the building is not obtained, CRA will allocate the proceeds to its view of fair market allocation between the land and the building. If the property is sold and improvements have no economic value, then the seller may be able to allocate full sale price to the land. The term no economic value generally means that the cost of demolition exceeds the building value. From taxation perspective, the solution must be defensible. As a caution, the fact that the buyer sees no value in such a building owning to different planned use of the property does not in itself create no economic value, and complex rules exist to reallocate proceeds for tax purposes from land to the building, potentially restricting the terminal loss amount. Recaptured capital cost allowance. At the time of property disposition, Income Tax Act requires that the recapture of the capital cost allowance if the value of the improvements have been has been maintained and or increased since originally acquired. The recapture cannot exceed the capital cost deduction allowed. As a rule, if the undepreciated capital cost has a positive balance and no asset remains, terminal loss can be obtained. If the negative UCC balance occurs due to the asset disposition, a recapture, referred to as the income inclusion, occurs even if the asset remain in that particular class. Recapture must be declared as income. Deferral of a recapture is possible in some instances if a reprint property is acquired within the specified time period. In this instance, all equal to recapture is applied against the UCC for the new property. Recapture can occur either when analyzing taxable income from operations, cash flow, or sale proceeds at the time of disposition. An example is provided related to the sale of the property, as the recaptured capital cost allowance will affect sale proceeds and consequently Cash flow after tax registrants must be aware of the basic procedures used in establishing whether a recapture has been realized. For the accurate forecasting of sales proceed after tax is necessary when calculating an after-tax internal rate of return. The calculation of internal rate of return is a topic under real estate maps analysis. So let's take an example. The acquisition price was $1 million. The soft cost and original land allocation was $300,000. Then the improvement allocation of the purchase is about $700,000. Improvement allocation on sale, let's say, is $900,000. Then the improvement allocation will be the lesser of these two allocations, which was $700,000, and less the capital improvements and undepreciated improvements at sale cost to the makes the recapture as $77,000. Using this now, there's a straight line method. Under the straight line method, the useful life of the depreciable assets must be estimated according to the regulations. The annual capital cost allowance takes into consideration takes taken represents a prorated amount based on the estimate. The calculation of CCA for clustering items uses a straight line as opposed to the declining balance method. Assuming that the capital cost allowance for the item is 10 years and prorated straight line calculation of the depreciation, then the first year depreciation will be, let's say, one tenth of $1,000, $1,000. The remaining capital cost will be $9,000. Second year will be another $1,000, and the remaining capital cost will be $8,000. The half year rule does not apply to most assets that fit the straight line method. In the case of taxation year for less than 12 months, in the first and last year of operation of the business, or in the year in which there has been a change in the fiscal year, it is possible to have a taxation year of less than 12 full months. In such a case, CCM must be prorated for the proportion of the number of days in the taxation year is 365. Undepreciated capital cost. Undepreciated capital cost is a capital cost associated with a specified improvement under a particular class, less any capital cost allowance already taken and less previously disposable in the same class. So to recap, undepreciated capital cost is a capital cost associated with any specific improvement under a particular class, less any capital cost allowance already taken and less a previously disposal in the same class. Moving on to the next section, site selection and economic development offices. Site selection services are increasingly focal whether a new business is being started or existing business is looking to expand. Consolidate, diversify, or reconfigure its operations based on shifting technology, market demands, or product innovation. Increasingly, busy executives seek the assistance of a facility or a site planning expert to streamline such process and scope analysis. Site selection and facility planning services can be provided by an internal team, external consultant, or a combination. The objective is to assess the available options and to arrive at the logical strategy for that particular enterprise, like building a new facility on a vacant land offered through a private sources or located in a municipally controlled industrial park, selecting an existing commercial structure that can be modified to suit unique need. Site selection experts are often faced with the daunting task of identifying and prioritizing client needs regarding the available location, labor supply and cost, energy sources and costs, community statistics, access and distance to the market considerations, demographic profile, and so forth. Typically, the site selection process must take three levels of analysis into consideration: regional, local, and site specific. With multinational organizations, the scope may be widened to national and international consideration. The process is further complicated by the host of regulatory requirements involving a specific municipality under consideration, as well as the provincial and statutory impact depending on the company and the scope of its operation. The site-specific factors. Site-specific considerations vary considerably, but would typically include site details and location, which is price, specific geographical location, frontage, and the total area. Transportation, proximity, and the costs concerning rail access, parking requirements, condition of adjacent access road, municipal expansion and improvements and plan and the public transit services, municipal supplies, water supply, storm water and sanitary services, electricity and natural gas services, fuel oil and propane delivery, and communication facilities, including any limiting factor, special consideration to costs relating to these services, condition and topography, soil condition and environmental factors, property terrain, physical barriers, or any other factors such as the need for a fill, a water retention pond. Similar considerations also given to environmental factors, including the proximity to wetland, floodplain requirements, and heritage issues. Zoning. Zoning provisions include permitted or excluded use setbacks, coverage, and height restrictions. To recap, there will be a site detail location, transportation, services, conditions or topography, and zoning. Dealing with economic development offices. Economic development offices have have important resources for those seeking suitable commercial sites for business operation. These offices in most Ontario municipalities attract new investment and employment, as well as support the growth of existing business community. In doing so, they assemble significant data about available real estate inventory and community accessibility data to assist in the site selection process. Economic development offices also provide key links to local business community contacts and connections to appropriate regional, provincial, and federal government sources. In many instances, these offices can help guide development applications through municipal process and streamline the approval process for companies unfamiliar with the regulatory requirements. These offices also provide background information on the local, provincial, and federal research and development initiative. Real estate registers will find the abundance of information useful to both existing businesses seeking expansion, locations, or out-of-town clients looking for our local sites. Most importantly, for real estate purposes, economic development offices collect information on available vacant land and resale building within the area. Economic development offices are often the initial point of contact for prospecting income businesses, as information gathered can be kept confidential. Economic development of officers. The best contact point in the economic development office is the economic development officer. This individual is typically responsible for facilitating economic development processes, developing community profiles, collecting information about available properties, gathering, partnering with local organizations to assist incoming business clients, summarizing key incentives available to those businesses, and generally promoting the community from a business perspective. Dealing with receivers and trustees in bankruptcy. Suggestions will encounter situations involving insolvent businesses. Insolvency and bankruptcy procedures are set out in the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, administered federally by the Superintendent of Bankruptcy. The Act applies to individual proprietors, partnership and limited companies who carry on business in Canada. Bankruptcy and insolvency legislation is complex. Essentially, if a person or a company is unable to meet that obligation, that person or entity is said to be insolvent. Three options are available when insolvency happens: proposal, receivership, and the bankruptcy itself. Proposal. The individual or entity makes a proposal to the creditors in an effort to settle the debt. In doing so, the individual or entity has the opportunity to avoid bankruptcy. The proposal can be made by any debtor who owns between $1,000 and $70,000 Special provisions apply to large amounts. Proposals set out a debtor's strategy to creditors for reducing the debt, extending the time period for repayment of or some combination thereof. A trustee in a bankruptcy is licensed by the superintendent of bankruptcy, oversees the process and prepares the proposal. The administrator is paid out of the payment made by the debtor under the proposal. The proposal is filed with the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, Canada. Creditors are allowed to vote on the proposal. Upon acceptance, the debtor must make all payments to the administrator or trustee and satisfy other requirements as set out in the proposal. Upon satisfactory completion, until which includes counseling sessions, a certificate of completion is issued. If payments and other requirements are not satisfied, the debtor must look to other avenues to resolve the matter. The second option is the receivership. Receivership is the most commonly associated with companies. Typically, a secured creditor takes control of the company either directly or by the way of appointed receivers. The receiver manages the company assets with the intention of winding down the corporation. Alternatively, the secured creditor may seek a court appointment, that is, a court order. The receiver, whether a private appointment or by a secured creditor or an order of the court, is generally authorized to control the operations, oversee the liquidation process, and disperse funds realized in accordance with the law and the regulatory requirements. Court-appointed receivership are increasingly commonplace. Added liability protections are offered to the secured creditor and the receiver. The court order typically outlines the receiver powers, along with the stay orders, temporary stopping of legal actions and proceedings concerning such matters as the supply of materials or services and the termination of any agreement that are crucial to the business operation. For example, a receiver overseeing a manufacturing operation in receivership will need assurance that the existing equipment leases are honored and the continuous supply of raw materials is assured in order to continue production at the point of resolution. The court order will also typically include protection for the receiver of common liability associated with the operation, like statutory, environmental, and employment provisions. For example, the court will provide for employee termination and then provide that the receiver can contract with these individuals during the winding down process. The receiver will also have the authority to develop a sales strategy to maximize fund realized from the sale, which are then paid to the creditors subject to the residual fees charged by the receiver. Sale of the asset. The receiver, whether private or a court appointed, will establish a plan to sell assets by tender, auction, or other process as deemed appropriate. If the real estate is involved, the receiver may elect to offer the property directly to the public and by tenders, auction property, or utilize the marketing services of a real estate brokerage. The specific strategy taken is largely dependent on the business assets being sold and the market conditions. Where appropriate, the receiver will attempt to sell the ongoing concern, as this approach typically realizes more to the creditors than the sale of the assets. If the assets are sold, they are returned that as is where its basis. The receiver does not make warrants and representations and given the lack of familiarity with the business or its needs or assets. In a court-appointed receivership, the court can issue a vesting order. A vesting order effectively provides a buyer with a court-sanctioned possession, control, and title of property. The vesting order removes listed encumbrances such as a mortgage or other creditor claims against the property identified in a schedule to that vesting order and provides the registration for a transfer deed in the applicable land registry office. The vesting order also typically sets out the transaction is exempt from the provisions of the Bulk Sales Act, which has been already repealed. Interim receivers and also receivers. The Court of Justice Act in Ontario provides for the appointment of a receiver. However, the Federal Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act also provides for the appointment of a short-term or interim receiver who essentially addresses immediate need to protect creditors' interests relating to rapidly depreciating assets. For example, an insolvent food processing operation would require immediate supervision to ensure that the perishable goods are properly managed pending a proposal or a bankruptcy notice. However, the role of interim receiver under Section 47 of the Federal Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act has gradually expanded in scope. For example, the Ontario court orders have enhanced the range of powers granted to the interim receivers. The court are often faced with a situation in which the interim receiver must take additional action to generally safeguard insolvent business assets. The BIA interim receiver role in many of these instances require a more all-inclusive approach to do whatever is necessary and practical under the circumstances to preserve the creditor's assets. As a result, judges have found it expedient to use the interim receiver under the BIA provision, particularly given that this provides for a Canada-wide receivership as opposed to the provincial CG authority. As a result, the line between federal short-term BIA interim receiver and the provincial receiver under the Court of Justice Act has become somewhat blurred. Bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a legal process which discharges most but not all debts subject to certain conditions. The debtor, upon declaring bankruptcy, hands over the assets to a trustee in the bankruptcy to sell those assets and distribute the funds among creditors. So to recap, a bankruptcy is a legal process which discharges most but not all debt subject to certain conditions. The debtor, upon declaring bankruptcy, hands over the assets to a trustee in the bankruptcy to sell those assets and distribute the funds among creditors. Under this ban, creditors cannot take any further action against the bankrupt individual upon declaration of bankruptcy. Trustee in bankruptcy. The person contemplating a bankruptcy must meet with with the trustee in bankruptcy to assess options. Trustee in bankruptcy are licensed by the Superintendent of Bankruptcy to administer bankruptcies. A trustee in the bankruptcy can also be involved in the proposal process or manage assets held in trusts relating to bankruptcy. The trustee in bankruptcy is also responsible to oversee various matters regarding during the bankruptcy process. He or she must keep track of and maintain contact with the bankrupt individual. The person or entity must respond to all trustees' requests and complete the various documents during the bankruptcy, report about earnings, living expenses, and significant changes. Procedures. If an individual or entity declares bankruptcy, two forms are completed: a statement of affair settling all all assets, liabilities, income, and expenses, and assignment of assets. Some debtors are not released, including the claim for alimony, spousal or child support, and debtor also got over fraud, a court fine, and award for damage following an assault or student loan obligation. Provision legislation sets out property exempt from the seizure of a bankruptcy. The court limits to the amount of equity within the particular assets. For motor vehicle is $5,000, clothing is $5,000, household good $11,300, tailor tool $11,000, and farmers is $20,300. So motor vehicle clothing $5,000, household goods and tools of trade $11,300, and farmers $20,300. First time bankrupt individuals are typically discharged 9 months after bankruptcy unless opposed by the creditor, trustee, or superintendent of bankruptcy. If opposed, including other reasons beyond the scope of the text, a court hearing will be required. The court will either provide an absolute discharge, a conditional discharge, or a suspended discharge. The Federal Companies Creditor Arrangement Act. The Federal Companies Creditors Arrangement Act allows that a company to facing insolvency or insignificant debt in excess of $5 million to establish a reorganization plan with its creditors. The company is granted a court order, typically 1 to 4 months, to work things out and keep the business operating, hence the common use for the term bankruptcy protection in the marketplace. During that period, the creditors cannot take any action including forcing the company into bankruptcy. Negotiation between parties may result in an arrangement in which the creditors accept debt restructuring, secure creditors are given some form of debt security, and also agree to overall debt reduction payment of a specified number of cents on each dollar of debt. Often the restructuring company emerges, but unsecured creditors, including holders of the common stock, may exit the process with little or nothing. If a deal is not stuck between the creditors and the business organizations or the court doesn't approve of the restructuring plan negotiated between the parties, the next step is receivership or bankruptcy and winding down of the company. Municipal sale tax. The municipal tax sales involves the sale of, of the land due to tax areas. Areas refer to the real property tax placed on or according to the tax roll that remain unpaid as of January 1st of the year following the year they were placed on or added to the roll. Procedure for sale of such land are governed by Municipal Tax Act. A municipality can register tax area certificate on January 1st of the third year after the taxes become owning. So to recap, municipal tax sales involves the sale of the land due to tax areas. Areas refer to the real property taxes placed on or added to the tax roll during the tax roll that remain unpaid as of January 1st of the year following the year they were placed on or added to the roll. Procedures for such sale of such land are governed by the Municipal Act Part 11. The municipalities can register a tax area certificate on January 1st of the third year after the taxes become owning. Registrants are typically not directly involved in such matters but would need some awareness. Tax area certificate. A tax area certificate is issued by the municipality against the title to the land and registered in the applicable land registry office. Municipalities must include information in the certificate as set out in the municipal tax sale rules. The taxes area certificate includes the municipality name, the street address of the property, a location if no address is available, statement of tax areas from the municipality treasurer, a statement that the land will be sold by public sale if cancellation price is not paid, various notices, procedure matters concerning how the property will be sold, and the legal description of the land. Note that the certificate registration must be sent within 60 days to the assessed owner, his or her spouse, or every person having registered interest as shown in the land registry records. Cancellation price. The tax area certificate can be cancelled by paying the cancellation price. The cancellation price consists of all areas owning, current real estate, real property taxes, interest and penalties, and other reasonable costs incurred by the municipalities. Other reasonable costs could be the legal fees, extension agreement, preparation of a survey if required to register the tax area certificate, and a reasonable cost incurred after advertising the property. An individual paying the cancellation price may request an accounting of costs from the municipal treasurer. Application to the court can be made if the accounting is not provided within 30 days, or the person believes that incorrect calculation occurred or unreasonable amounts were used. An exception to this procedure involves a municipality that has passed a bylaw as to the reasonable cost for such land sales. The owner, spouse, or other receive notices that the mortgagee, other receive notices the mortgagee may pay the cancellation price within 1 year of the certificate registration. To recap, the cancellation price consists of all tax areas owning, current property tax, interest, penalties, and reasonable costs. Other reasonable costs could include legal costs, extensions agreement, preparation of a survey if required to register the tax area certificate. An individual paying the cancellation price may request an accounting of the cost from the municipal treasurer. The application to the court can be made if an accounting is not provided within 30 days, or the person believes that incorrect calculation occurred or reasonable amounts are used. An exception to this procedure involves a municipality that has passed a bylaw to reasonable cost for such land sales. The owner, of course, others receive notice must pay cancellation price within 1 year of the certificate registration. If the cancellation price is not paid in 20 days following the registration of the tax area certificate, the municipal treasurer sends a final notice in 30 days after that date. If the cancellation price is not paid within 20 days following the registration of the tax area certificate, the municipal treasurer sends a final notice within 30 days after that date. The public sale is conducted if the payment is not received within 1 year of the certificate registration. Before 1 year period expires, the municipality may extend time period in which the cancellation price must be paid. If the payment is made by the owner or spouse, the treasurer must register a tax area cancellation certificate. If the person who is entitled to receive notice, other than the owner, makes such payment, he or she has a lien on the land which is priority or interest of the person notified, and the person is named on the tax area certificate and paid on the tax area cancellation certificate. This certificate is the conclusive proof of the payment. Tax area cancellation certificate verifies that the tax area certificate registered against specific property has been cancelled and that the cancellation price was paid either by the owner, consequently no lien existed, or by another person entitled to receive notice and the individual has a lien with priority over anyone else that received that notice. Public sale. The land is offered for public sale by public auction or by public tender, assuming no payment of cancellation price. The methods selected rest with the municipal treasurer. The land is advertised once in the Ontario Gazette and once a week for 4 weeks in a newspaper circulated in the local municipality. If no local newspaper exists, a notice is posted at the municipal office or other prominent place in the community. Public tender. In an advertisement, a public tender sets out the minimum tender the cancellation price as of the first day of advertising, the final date and time, 3 p.m. for submission, for render submission, and the various qualifications regarding the land. The municipality has no obligation to provide vacant position. The tender is prepared using the prescribed form. The person tendering must state at what price the individual will purchase the property. That individual must enclose a certified check, bank draft, or money order for 20% of the tendered amount. The balance must be paid within 14 days of acceptance. All tender are time dated upon receipt, as other time would establish priority should two acceptable tenders be received for the same amount. The municipality is also permitted to submit a tender under the under the under the public tender if the land is to be used for municipal purposes. On the day established by the municipality, the tender opens all tenders, eliminates those that do not meet requirements, and selects the two highest acceptable tenders. The highest tenderer is informed that the balance must be submitted within 14 days, failing which the deposit is forfeit. If such occurs, the property is then offered to the second tenderer. If no successful tenderer is obtained, the municipality issues a notice of vesting, giving of an interest in a fee simple to the municipality. Public auction. The treasurer or someone named by the individual may act as the auctioneer. The auction is subject to minimum bid. The highest bidder becomes a successful buyer if the amount bid, the land on tax and accumulated taxes are paid to the auctioneer. The successful bidder is provided with a receipt showing the legal description, name of the bidder, and the successful bidder will provide with a receipt showing the legal description, name of the bidder, and the name in which the tax deeds will be registered. The auction is declared closed if no successful bidder. If there is no successful buyer, the notice of vesting is prepared and the registered, giving fee simple interest to the municipalities. Ownership options and interests. Sole proprietor is easy to set up, unlimited liability, no separation between business and income and the personal earnings, so no continuity. Then there's a partnership. So a partnership can be broadly defined as a relationship between two or more individual entities with the intention of making a profit. A partnership is not specifically defined in Income Tax Act, but relies on the common law concerning whether a partnership does in fact exist at any given situation. The mere act of combining efforts to make a profit may or may not constitute a partnership. A partnership is more substantial and contractual in nature. The partners are not only provide funding but also involved with the personal effect in achieving specific business and profit goals. Partnership are normally formalized through partnership agreement. An important part of the spirit of partnership is the fact that all partners can be liable for the action of one another if such action were carried out in the normal course of business involving partnership. This joint and several liability issues is primary consideration for forming the partnership. In a partnership, the income of the partner for tax is calculated at the partnership level. A partnership is not a limited liability company, and therefore each partner must report his share of profit or losses. Transfer of assets to and from the partnership can be complicated with certain tax pitfalls. Partnership may elect a year other than a calendar year, and the income or loss may be allocated to individual partner in the year that partnership year end is established. To provide for a certain amount of time. It's fine for a new partnership. Limited partnership is an investment arrangement that limits part of liability to the amount invested and also but also limiting the profit he or she can make. A limited partner is not permitted to have a voice in the management of the company. Limited partnership must be registered and have at least one general partner whose liability is not restricted. Limited partners enter into agreement whereby their liabilities is restricted to individual capital investment. Limited partners must be passive investors and turn over the management and general operations to the general partners. A corporation is a business entity created by the statute law and established under the article of incorporation. Corporations vary from a small privately held operation to large, offering a public company. Corporation, unlike the sole proprietorship partnership, provides distinction between the business operation and its owner. As a legal entity, the corporation is capable of merging, creating subsidiary companies, and generally operates distinct and separate from its owners. Corporation registered in Ontario under the Corporation Act. The registration number involves choosing a name for the corporation, conducting the name search, confirming the completing the article of incorporation, and filing the application for corporation with the Ministry of Government Services. This creates a corporation legal entity and protects the corporation name in Ontario. Federal incorporation allows for companies to operate anywhere in Canada as well as nationally, protecting the corporation name. Corporation ownership is controlled through the issuance of shares with the right of the shareholder established by the article of incorporation. Shares can be sold or transferred. Companies remain in existence until such time as shareholders decide. Otherwise, corporations are the most common form of business ownership in Ontario. A major reason for the popularity is the fact that the liability of the shareholders is restricted to the value of the share held. Debt of the corporation are distinct from shareholder unless the agreement is signed to the contrary. Corporations do involve more paperwork, initial costs, and ongoing fees for record maintenance in comparison to sole proprietorship or partnership. Trust. A trust ownership is a special relationship in which one company, by the way of agreement, gives property to the other, to property to give property or the assets to the other person who manages for ultimate use benefit of yet another beneficiary. Historical trust ownership existed while all title on the name of the registered owner, but in fact who property for the real or beneficial owner. Type of trust. The trust ownership over the years expanded to address diverse situations. For example, individuals who wish to protect beneficiary in the face of a creditor to gain certain tax advantage, like RSP, and effectively defer taxes by establishing a trust that will transfer assets from one generation to the next. Trusts are generally identified as either testimoniary or intervivos. Testimoniary trusts take effect upon the death of the treasurer. Intervivo trusts come into effect while the trustor is alive. The family trust can take on considerable importance in recent years and it seeks to protect state for the benefit of the children. As such, the settler trustor settler establishes a trust agreement which sets out the responsibility of the trustee and provides framework for disposition of assets or the income from these assets or beneficiaries. Beneficiaries can either be income beneficiaries or capital beneficiaries or both. Detached procedure for establishing trusts go beyond the scope. Real estate investment trusts, and then there are joint ventures. So again, in joint ventures, business number is not provided by the CRA. I think with this we are done. Thanks for your time.